This episode of the Honey Badger Diaries is called Risk versus Reward and an Unexpected Gift. Let's see how they're getting on. This is their story.
I think Zimbabwe was the first place where, Zambia was the first place where the weather was wrong. We were not in Zambia at the right time of year. And the Caprivi Strip, that became real again. So we went in, I remember there's only one entrance to this national park. And the visitors book, it had been a month since any other tourist had entered.
Oh God, that's right.
And we were like, there's got to be a reason for that, but let's check it out. And sure enough, we were following this track and we were going through these riverbeds and they just started getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually we got stuck in the middle of one and there was a bush on the other side. So we winched out, but there was no bush going back.
Yeah.
And but we can't, if we try and go back this way, it's just not gonna work. So we kind of realized that campsite, there's something wrong, and we later found out it doesn't exist anymore, and it's just in this permanently flooded area. And so we thought, well, let's just camp here in the middle of nowhere. And it was high grass, which is always a little bit sketchy because you don't know if
everywhere.
you hear the lions roaring and the buffalo. You just don't know if you're going to be eaten whilst you're there for dinner. And then we thought we've got to get out the same way we came, but we can't go over that bit. So we were then walking. Again, high grass, just not aware if we're going to be eaten or not. We had sticks. Just trying to find narrower bits of river that we could get through. And eventually we found, I think it was like 3 or 4 small streams that were small enough for me to think, well, if we hit it hard enough, maybe we can just like jump over. And we did for 3 of them.
This is where James's logic kind of can take you down.
But the 4th one worked slightly less well, and we basically broke the rear axle.
Snapped it, right?
Snapped it, wheel fell off.
In the middle of a national park.
And we just kind of like put it back on, like pushed it on, and with a bit of a hammer, and then just drove at like 1 kilometer an hour back out with this wheel going. And we, by some miracle, we got out and we made it to a road and did the good old stop by the road. Everyone else stops, gets the hammer out, whacks it. It's like, it's snapped. Like, you can't, this is not something we're going to fix. And amazingly, these Chinese guys were coming past, they stopped. And of course, they also pulled out a hammer and gave it a whack. And eventually they said, look, we're building these roads in Namibia. And we have these massive.
Namibia.
We had these massive low loader trucks. They're designed for tracked vehicles, not cars. So we can't promise you get your car on it.
Yeah.
But if you can, you can just take it to wherever you want. Just tip the driver.
Awesome.
And so this thing arrived. We managed to kind of winch it on, and he took us to like a truck garage in whatever that town is on the east end of Kentucky.
Rui or
Yeah.
I can't remember now. It's the major town on the eastern edge. And we camped in this like horrible industrial area.
no.
And when Dave Friendly Face arrived and said, "Hey, what's up? Yeah, I can fix your car. I'll order some parts. It'll take a week." And he towed our car with its 3 wheels to a campsite, and we were just like propped up there, still sleeping in the tent, waiting for the parts to arrive. And it worked out quite well.
Well, I mean, it worked out as we had to pay something. I can't remember how much, but that was the biggest dent in the pocket.
Yeah,
I mean, by that point, we were right at the end of the trip anyway. We'd used up so much money for all of our trips and all of our little like bits and pieces that we've been doing, and then that happened, and it was just like.
But we weren't being ripped off. I mean, it was reasonable, but it just needed an entire axle.
Yeah.
And side shafts.
Like $6,000 or $12,000.
I can't remember. I think it's $10,000 or something.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't that much, but it was. I remember it was a sting.
Yeah.
But we had no choice, and it just these terrible when you do take a bit of an extra risk here and there.
Yeah.
What we just found is that the chances are you're not going to die. You're not going to get eaten. It's not going to be the end of the world. And there were times when we thought, this is the end of the world. We'd just gone into Namibia and we had no phones. We had a satellite phone only. And I remember calling a friend in the Netherlands trying to ask for help. And you think, this is it. We're screwed. But you never are. There's always a way out.
There's always somebody that's going to be walking past you sooner or later. If you can survive for 5 days, you're good. That's the rule.
I mean, who would have ever thought the Chinese would save us in Namibia? I mean, you just never see it coming.
No.
But yeah, people are always willing to help when you're really in the shit of it.
How many times, Mira, that you are wild camping, you go and look for the spot and you think, anywhere in Africa, right? And you look and you think, oh, this is insane. And by the time you get the rooftop tent up, there's one little pickaninny that comes running out and then he disappears. Yeah. And then a half hour later, you got 50 people coming to look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
But actually, there was one actually where in Lake Albert, we were in this campsite and it was nice, it was comfortable, but it wasn't
the Murchison Falls National Park.
Murchison Falls in Uganda. And it wasn't exciting. And there was this island that you had to get a ferry over to. And unless you pay a fortune to stay in this hotel, you can't stay.
Yeah.
And that morning, I was like, fine. We were with Mira and her sister at the time. And I was like, I'm just not going to...
Uganda again.
I'm not going to tell them my plan.
Yeah.
And we reached the island and I just drove so far south that I knew we weren't going to make it back to the ferry. And then I pretended that I was lost. And I was like, oh, you know what? I think the safest bet for us is just to stay here now.
Yeah.
And it was the best campsite of the entire...
It was
beautiful. And there was no one because it was just an island.
Yeah.
So no one, and you could, the sun setting over the Democratic Republic of Congo and the lake and just wildlife everywhere.
That was good. My sister totally freaked out, of course, because she hadn't been accustomed to any of this.
Yeah.
And I'm so used to being the risk taker who couldn't care less about rules. But she eventually got over it, didn't she?
It was good. I mean, we had a glass of wine sitting on the roof of the car so we wouldn't be eaten by lions. And we set up a little awning so that we could have showers. But it was perfect tranquility, beautiful scenery, incredible wildlife.
I would say maybe only 2 or 3 occasions in the entire year and 5 months that we were out where we actually were in complete solitude.
It was and just achieved perfection.
Yes.
You know when you sit there and go,
yes,
we'll never get better than this moment.
Yeah.
There's occasions that you do not have when you're quarantined at home.
Yeah. No, definitely sitting in four walls, going mad.
Yep.
All right, so you've now gone into Namibia. Now, basically, you've left the desert to go into Africa, and you're basically ending your trip pretty much back in the desert. Now, the Namib Desert compared to Liwa, compared to everything over here, what are your thoughts?
It's
bigger there.
It's different. It's a very
It's
different
huge, it's
desert. I think two things. Firstly, the skeleton coast, which was it's unique because you got almost a combination of the ocean, the desert, and more like wadis almost. I can't really explain, but that's kind of, you're kind of going through a 3 or 4 different terrains within 2 or 3 hours, versus here where it's just dunes.
Yeah.
But that obviously gets a bit different when you're down by Sosavle and so on in Namibia.
Did you guys see the desert elephant?
Yeah, we got chased by one.
Yes, it was terrifying.
And it's a whole different elephant. I mean, I don't know if you realized by that time, but I mean, they got longer legs, the ears are bigger.
They're more aggressive.
Massive.
Yeah, we had another problem with the car in Etosha.
Was it Etosha? Yeah.
And so we got stuck and we had to fix it. We managed to fix whatever it was. I can't remember what it was.
It was a J-clip, so our springs kept snapping off from
the leaf spring
release
shackles.
spring shackles kept breaking. So we just clapped back on with J-clips, basically. I think that's what it was then.
Yeah, it's not such an easy fix.
Yeah.
You still got to jack it up. It's a horrible fix.
Do what you got to do.
And we saw a cheetah hunt, and then we were just coming into the campsite after dark. We weren't really allowed to be out then. And this elephant.
We all realised that you break the rules by now.
And this elephant was in the track. And normally you just kind of stop. I remember one time in Kruger where we stopped and I just switched the engine off and he came right up to the bonnet, angry, ears flared, and then just walked. Whereas this guy, he wasn't stopping. He was coming for us.
Yeah.
And so we just ended up reversing fast down the track, and it got a bit wider, and eventually we just kind of drove around him. But that was a desert elephant. And then that night we saw the honey badger
for the first time.
They visit this particular campsite every night. And we picked it especially. That was awesome.
That was like our highlight. We were literally looking for honey badgers since the day that we arrived in Africa and could just not find them. And then
next time I've got very good luck with honey badgers. I've never not gone to a national park without seeing a honey badger once. And I've grown up in the bush. I have never gone without seeing a honey badger.
That's crazy. So that was the only occasion we did get to see honey badgers on the entire trip.
My most favorite animal there is in Africa.
Yeah, that's so cool. So we did that, and then this is another example actually. We had a plan, and then we just spoke to someone who knew someone who met someone who told us, don't do that. You have to drive down the Apupi River.
Oh yeah, Apupa Falls.
And I'm so glad I had that conversation. It was a beautiful drive, and the Apupa Falls.
Oh my God!
Spectacular.
So you did the Kwakiland, drive right up through to the border with Angola, and then you literally take a left, and you drive down this riverbed all the way right through to Apupa Falls, which is right on the edge of the.
And then after there, we went down to through I think called Van Zyl's Pass, which was quite a fun track.
So did you do Van Zyl's Pass with your vehicle?
Yeah.
You're a nutter.
But we did it. We later realised that we shouldn't have, but we did it both ways in the end because we wanted to get a good video. Apparently, that's not the done thing.
And not only that, but I didn't realise, Sean. By then, I was pregnant. I must have been 2 months pregnant. I had no idea.
The question was coming because it was, at one point because we. People that know you and people that have watched the show, and we did a bit of an Overland series in the past, right? So I think cat's out of the bag that Toby was built in the rooftop tent in Africa, right?
Exactly.
So at this point in time, you're preggy already.
I was preggy. I had no idea. So because basically we stopped taking the malaria pills in Botswana. So we were on Larium right from the start. We just decided we'll stick it out, which caused a couple of occasions of crazy dreams and weird things.
Horrible drug. Thank God they've taken it off the market.
Have they? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God for that, because it's just so messed up. And I was only taking half pills, but I remember very clearly thinking, well, as soon as we arrive in Botswana, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. So we just done Malawi, Malawi, Zambia, which we were really concerned about there. And then at the end of Zambia, I just said, I'm done. And I stopped. James did it for maybe a couple more weeks after I did. Oh, sorry. Can you still see us?
Yeah, James. There we go. Yeah.
And we got pregnant in Botswana in one of the salt plains, probably Kubu Islands, where we think is probably the likeliness. But anyway, so by then, when we did Van Zyl's Pass, which I mean, I don't know if you know, but it is unbelievably bumpy. I was probably
it's an off-road track. It's not an overlander's track, right?
Yes.
It is a rock crawling.
Exactly.
It's an overland track.
No, it is not an overland track, but it was fun.
But if anyone is overlanding and you're not in a big truck, you must
try and do it. No,
it's not that hard. Like if you've been driving non-stop for a year by that point, it's not.
If you're not knowing what you're doing in an overland truck that's top heavy, you could put it on your roof quite quickly.
Yeah,
that's
very
true.
much.
Yeah, as you mentioned, by now you've probably got closer to 45,000 Ks on your vehicle, so you're pretty much in tune with it.
Yes. Exactly, but it was great fun. I mean, that whole trip was actually, because by the time we even got to Opupu Falls and we stayed and dealt with it, like the whole Himba tribe as well, which was another awesome experience.
The Himba tribe. I remember there were two places really where we saw the stereotypical African tribes.
Yeah.
One was Turkana in the kind of southern Ethiopia, where they're quite aggressive. Probably rightly so, but everyone's got a gun, and people would throw rocks at the car. The Himba tribe are they're just friendly, wonderful people, and that meant that we kind of we got right into their villages, and they would welcome us in, and we would eat with them. We'd help them out medically with our first aid
that's the one
kit.
thing that's very interesting. They obviously picked up on the fact that if you're Western, you come and you've got Panadol or some kind of medicine, because that's the first thing they ask for, which I thought was so strange. And the first time we experienced it, we genuinely thought this kid was hurt, and we were like trying to get the first aid kit out and bandaging him up and so on. And then like 3 or 4 times later, we realized, oh no, this is just a thing for the Himba.
Yeah, they're just taking. Everybody else wants a Coke and a cigarette. They want your medical supply.
They want a paracetamol. Yeah.
But it is by far okay. I know by ranking, Rwanda is the friendliest and the safest country in Africa now for the past 5 or 6 years. But as far as I'm concerned, Namibia is. Had you started your trip the other way around, I think you would have had a false insecurity of what Africa was like. And you started in Namibia, by the time you went up, you probably would have got yourself into far worse circumstances. And by starting in East Africa, it's a blow, it's a hard work, it's a whack, it's a wake-up call. But your vigilance and your radar goes on, and you keep that radar. By the time you get into Namibia, it's like bliss. It's like coming back to the UAE and camping, wild camping. There's nobody, there's nothing.
I mean, we seriously thought about it when we were there at one point. So we did the Marion Flus as well. And this one campsite right at the end of the Marion Flus, run by a Swiss couple who have now left, I know, because they've had a baby. But we got there and we were sitting there and they were telling us about how, they basically were just on a holiday in Namibia, found this opportunity, took it, and have been living there for 5 years and building this beautiful campsite. And James and I were like, this could be ideal. We're both jobless at this point. We have nothing left for us in the UAE other than family. And we're like, let's try it. Why not? If we were going to stay anywhere in the world, this would be the place that we would end up, right?
Absolutely agree.
But Namibia with just visas and the whole process of trying to get a job there is almost impossible. So we did genuinely think about it very seriously when we were there.
I mean, it was just so, and you can drive for a whole day in Namibia and not see anyone.
Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely.
And there's one point where we were kind of just going through. It felt a bit like driving through I don't know, the Hajar Mountains in Oman.
Yes.
Similar landscape, and then just these two cheetahs running along next to the car.
Yeah.
And it's just extraordinary. And we did kind of break out and go down to the Skeleton Coast.
That's when we ate our ostrich. No, it wasn't ostrich. It was oryx.
No,
oryx steaks.
Yeah, it was oryx steaks that were just beautiful.
Amazing.
Like
We've never
fillet
had
steaks
oryx
from an
before.
oryx.
Yeah.
This is in the Marion Fluke.
Yeah.
Don't tell too many people.
Really?
Okay.
Awesome.
Sorry about
Fantastic.
that.
But that's why it's a fantastic meat, but not a lot of people will eat it, right? Because it's not well known, but it is insane.
Yeah. I mean, we hadn't eaten a proper steak for a long time by that point, and these guys just went, look, we were doing a whiskey tasting with these Swiss guys who are fans of their whiskey. We're getting the whiskey out, then we're going to get you a couple of steaks. And it was
delish, yeah.
Yeah, that was yummy. And we did a bit of the Skeleton Coast, and it's all quite heavily protected there, and you need various licenses. And we were talking about the desert earlier. You can't here. You can just take a bearing and go right until you hit a fence. There, that's not really the case. You need various licenses. So there were a couple of times when we took some liberties, but we also wanted to respect. I think they're looking after if you leave tire marks in the
well, the amount of wildlife that is still in the Skeleton Coast, I mean, it looks barren, but the amount of wildlife that is actually there compared to what there is here, and that's why they don't want everybody going off the track, because you're killing the sidewinders, you're killing all that. So underneath the crust of the sand, it's riddled with wildlife. It just looks barren, and that's why they just keep everybody off the tracks or on the tracks.
There's one guy we met there who has a permit, and the dream one day is to go back and just drive the whole length of the Skeleton Coast. Yeah. And I guess you're staying on the beach a bit like I did in that Top Gear series. Yes. You're not harming anything, but you need the permit to get in there, and then you can really explore.
Yeah, I think Namibia allows itself to do 2 months on its own, right? Or even 3 months, and you're probably not even going to see half of it. But
end up doing about a month, well, maybe more actually, because with Caprivi strip and us having to wait around for the car to get fixed. Yeah. We probably did about a month and a week or so in Namibia. And we could have easily done longer. I mean, that was...
I would say in hindsight, Namibia was perhaps my favourite country of the whole. Yeah. It's a little bit more developed, a little bit better organised, and properly barren. So you really can feel like you are in the middle of nowhere.
No, it is. I think it's a great end to a trip like this, So you're rushing, you get to Namibia, it actually just drips off, right? We do it often. My favorite trip and my birthday trip normally when we're not stuck in COVID is to go to Serengeti. And then we do Serengeti for 5-6 days, and that's proper, 4 o'clock in the morning, you game drive. And then we go to Zanzibar and we spend 3-4 days, and that's where you actually relax. The busy go-to, you have to do this, and then you go and chill. And Namibia is that part of an African trip. Once you get into Namibia, you can let your guard down, you can relax. Aren't as many lions. Not everything wants to eat you. Not the people don't want to kill you. And
so true.
It's your kind of vacation.
And you wouldn't get anywhere else. I mean, I think South Africa and Namibia are quite similar. South Africa is way more dangerous. This battery is going to die very soon, by the way.
Okay.
And so South Africa is a way more dangerous experience, but has all of that wildlife available to it. Like if you really want to compare what South Africa has to offer and what Namibia has to offer. I mean, Namibia is probably slightly more diverse because of the desert, but it's very similar. The difference is South Africa, it's the people that's a concern. You have to have your guard up all the time. And that was the only option you had. So
you shipped the vehicle from Cape Town, yeah? Back?
No,
Durban, yeah.
Yeah, we basically, we finished Namibia, got a ferry over in quite a cool national park, and then we circumnavigated South Africa, essentially.
So you did the Smile of Africa, so you did Cape Town all the way, did the Transkei Coast, Lesotho, Transkei all the way up.
Lesotho, Swaziland, back into Kruger, and then back down to Durban. did the shark diving out there as well. So we did a bit more of that too. So South Africa was a beautiful end. It was an easier end, I think, for sure, than the other way around.
Like washing machines in campsites, things like that.
Look, I mean, those campsites here, they are inexpensive because of the rand, but it's luxury campsites. It's a proper campsite, is what people would understand in Europe to be a caravan
campsite.
park.
Yeah, exactly.
You lose a bit of the adventure because you've got big fences around, and you don't. The advantage is you're not worried about being eaten by a lion.
Yeah.
The disadvantage is it's you and kind of 15 others.
It's just a whole bunch of people. That's the only issue, is that you're permanently on top of people. And
we very rarely, I would say, in the trip camped with other people, but in South Africa it was more often.
Yeah.
So we did that, got to Durban, and then shipped the car back to Salala.
Okay.
And at this point, it was June, July, so it was hot. But I still wanted to do a proper drive up. I didn't want to ship back to Dubai.
Okay.
So we shipped to Salala, and then I flew down with a friend. Mira actually stayed in Dubai then.
So yeah, by then we found out I was pregnant when we arrived in South Africa in the Overland, and then we did our first doctor's visit when we arrived in Cape Town. So by then I was over 3 months pregnant, and so literally, it was quite a nice little surprise to the end of our holiday. But when we got to Durban, I just was like already. By then I was 4.5 months. So by the time we actually flew back,
I mean, it didn't stop us climbing Table Mountain and going cage diving.
That's true.
With the great white sharks.
The only thing I did stop is scuba diving. I thought that would be a bit silly.
Yeah. Yes.
But then, yeah. So by then we obviously flew out to back to Dubai, and I already had a little bit of a belly and ready to be pregnant. So I decided to stick back, and James did the horrible. Oh man, June through till
that was tough. It was Ramadan, and the guy that I went with initially he said, "Well, I can't come because it's Ramadan."
Yeah.
And I said, "Look, I'm well," and so we were both fasting, and I used to sleep with ice packs, so I'd stick one under each armpit to get me to sleep. It was hot. But it was still fun, actually. No, it was. You wouldn't have enjoyed it, but it was a fun.
And we've been to Salala, we've experienced all that, so it wasn't like I was missing on.
Yeah, because Kharif wouldn't have kicked in by then either. So July, the Kharif season hasn't kicked in, so you don't have the rainforest.
It was just hot.
Hot and humid.
Yeah.
But what an adventure! Something that I think we both feel like we're very grateful for having done, and would love to do again. I mean, I don't think it's that's the thing about overlanding, is it's almost instills a new bug in you. It's a new addiction. The reality, our lives right now doesn't really cope for it. And with 2 very young kids, we did meet quite a few overlanders who were doing it with kids.
Yeah, and who were having kids on the way and kept going.
But I think I would rather wait for them to be a bit older, and then I'm definitely.
Well, they can experience it as well. I mean, we've traveled with Toby and James. You've traveled with Toby on your own a couple of times as well. I mean, it's not an issue. It's just if you're in this environment that we are here in the GCC, it's pretty safe because it's less than a half an hour away to any kind of civilization.
Yeah.
Once you start getting stuck in the middle of Salt Pan, in the middle of Botswana and Sao Pan, and you've got 2 young kids with you, now you've got that additional responsibility. Whereas the 2 of you can sit back and say, right, 5 days, we'll wait for somebody to get us. Once you've got young kids, it changes the whole dynamic on how you plan a trip. And but once they get into they're 10 years old or 12 years old or in their teens, they can actually assist when something goes wrong, and it changes the whole dynamic.
And that's what's the hope. And to be honest, again, with James being such a risk taker, it's not a risk I'm willing to take. So I've got to hold back on that until I know that the kids can actually cope if we need them to help out or support or whatever. But it's definitely not the end. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
Africa, we've done. We probably still need to do West Africa, but I think again South America.
South America.
You see, I would leave West Africa now and just do Argentina and Chile on its own.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's just all.
I'd love to take a couple of years and do the whole of the South American continent. But I remember talking to my boss before we left, and he said, you've got a great career ahead of you. You're going to lose so much money, and he was right. I would say we are even now, quite a lot less well off than we could have been. But I said to him, look, on your deathbed, you might be thinking about how much money you've made, and that's fine. That's lovely. I'm going to be thinking about the time I went to Africa.
Yeah. And Toby. And don't forget Toby.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you guys wouldn't have been in the relaxed frame of mind carrying on in similar lives. You probably would have been in corporate mode and saying, well, it's not the right time. We'll plan maybe for the next 2 or 3 years. And you've been at this point with no kids.
Yeah, that's very true. Absolutely true.
So no, I mean, absolutely no regrets. It certainly has changed the rest of our lives. And then not everything about that is positive, but certainly the average is very positive.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm glad you never got divorced in the first 2 weeks, because that's what makes or breaks it. And I'm glad that you enjoyed Africa, because anybody can do it, right? And I think this is what stops most people from going to Africa and traveling through Africa, is because you read all the press. Once you get into it and once you get underneath the skin of it, it's really not difficult. You just got to think that way, and you got to be vigilant.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's different to being in the UAE. You've got a different approach, a different perspective, but that doesn't mean you can't adjust. Everywhere you go in the world, you can always adjust.
Absolutely awesome. Okay, well, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. In the introduction, I have mentioned go to your YouTube channel. Thanks for taking the time. It was awesome. Pity we can't do this and cheers for real, but
See you later.
Hopefully we can get out soon. Hopefully.